I spent years drinking heavily just to get the bad images out of my own head. Prostitutes, escorts, strippers, other kinds of sex workers. What was your first day on the job like? A bit intimidating, but not really much different. If anything, I had a little better of an idea of what I was doing compared to working at Starbucks. Former male stripper here. It was awesome. It was comedic, sexy, and fun. Just an absolute party. The crowd had a blast. We quintuple lap danced the bachelorettes. It didn't pay much, but I wasn't really in it for the money. I would totally start another show if I can make it happen. I only had 2 brief uncomfortable moments that night. First, an old woman just grabbed my goodies. Second, another old woman shoved $1 so far between my cheeks that I didn't see it until after the show. Stripped briefly to pay for a semester's worth of tuition and books. On my first day, a lady shouted, "Whip out your pecker." And I couldn't help but to laugh from both nerves and the fact she said pecker. After that, the rest seemed pretty easy. I started as a waitress in a strip club. 3 months later I tried dancing. My first time in the VIP, where I had been seeing the workflow for 3 months, so I knew what to say and where to go. But my hands were shaking. The guy even asked me if I was okay. After that first hour it was fine, but my body literally was shaking in the beginning. I didn't feel scared, though. It was a natural reaction. Former exotic dancer of 3 years, the first night was intimidating in part because the other dancers are generally hostile toward new girls. That may have just been the case at that club, I'm not sure. Also because the job itself is so heavily stigmatized that you find yourself afraid that somebody you know will see you. That faded after a few weeks though, and it was actually a really fun job. You should always be careful not to fall into the lifestyle, though. Keep work and personal lives separate. I was a cam girl for a little bit. First time was with my roommate. She had been doing it and I knew she was a cam girl. She was making more in one night than I was from babysitting like 4 times a week. It was really awkward at first, but my roommate was a pro and played into it. First time lesbian, sorta thing. Those tokens were flying in. Despite it being awkward, it was fun and we made a lot. So I started my own account and became a cam girl. It's hard at first. Building up clients isn't the easiest thing. Some night you'll spend hours on cam and won't make much. Some nights you'll kill it without even trying. Find something that makes you stand out. A kink, unique personality, or unique talent. I look really young and I'm very small. It might sound gross, but my market was guys into daddy dom little girl and playing the part of little girl. Did escorting for about a year. First day was relieving. I was terrified at first because I was given the rundown for what redheads to look out for. There were a lot. But I went on. Most of my clients ended up being older men who just wanted a pretty girl to be seen with and to listen to them. My first day felt more like a therapist than an escort. I'm long retired now, but I was 21 at the time and at a loose end, new city and no job, so decided to work at a gentleman's club as a prostitute. I'd done my research and been in for an interview, so I was feeling confident and relaxed. No one else showed up on time, so I was the only girl there on the day shift and sat chatting to the receptionists. My first client was a really good-looking English, Sri Lankan guy who was really sweet and equally nervous. We both couldn't believe it was the other's first time until we were both fumbling and laughing trying to put a condom on correctly. I can't remember who else I saw that day, but I do remember getting paid more than I had earned in a week working 2 jobs. I ended up working for around 7 years and really enjoyed it. Was a stripper in my late teens. First day I was nervous as duck. Some drunk dude walks up to the stage waving a $1 bill and says, "Slap your ass, I'll give you $1." Oddly enough, that made me somehow more comfortable with the whole thing. I actually enjoyed it, and wasn't half bad. Made more money, legally, from 17 to 20 than any other job I had until like 2 years ago. I'm 37 now. I worked independently as an escort, so there wasn't really anyone to give me advice on what to expect. I read some websites here and there with general advice and set up a profile. The first few messages were people trying to scam me or looking for free nudes, and eventually somebody came through who seemed genuine. We discussed everything and then set a meet-up at his place. Followed up with a phone call as I was setting off to confirm. Seemed a bit shifty over the phone, which made me nervous, and I didn't fully understand the directions to his place. I walked in circles around several apartment blocks being lost and called him nearly in tears because I couldn't figure out where to go. He ended up standing outside his block, so I saw him and he actually looked normal, lol. Slightly balding, wearing a t-shirt and jeans with a round face and a kind expression. I can still picture him waving at me and me running towards him like a lost child who just found their parents. Got inside his apartment, ushered him into the shower with me, and then the actual sex part was over fairly quickly. He booked a whole hour and we probably spent 45 minutes just talking about his life, video games and movies we like. The job has its ups and downs, but after that I stopped being so nervous and learned it wasn't as difficult as I thought. Most of my job was just being a good listener and boosting egos, making people feel good about themselves. Escort in a brothel. Edit: escort is a commonly used synonym for all the other words for full-service sex worker where I'm from, making a note as there has been some confusion. Honestly, my first day was a mixed bag. The other girl I worked with was hilarious and properly took me under her wing, and fed me a glass of wine before my first John to settle my nerves. I haven't drank on the job since that day, but that one drink really helped. I got tipped by one client, assaulted by another. When I was assaulted though, the other worker, the receptionist and my boss all had my back and gave him a proper telling off and barred him. This was a one-off, it hasn't happened since. I've never felt safer in any other job, and I have more control. I walked home that day with more money than I'd earn in a week in my last job. I've never looked back. I still work there. I'm planning on doing more independent work once this pandemic settles, but my plan has always been to still do a few shifts a month. Sex work can be so isolating, so it's good for the social aspect if nothing else. Terrifying. I was 21 years old and had never even stepped foot inside a strip club. I had bought a matching bra and underwear set from Marshalls along with regular heels. Big mistake. I was told to watch the dancer before me on stage, who of course was gorgeous and clearly knew what she was doing. I went up there and immediately busted my ass because of the normal-sized heels. The rest of the time was just spent holding onto the pole for dear life and hoping I wouldn't get fired for being the worst dancer they'd ever witnessed. I wasn't fired and eventually got the hang of everything, but I still cringe at how awful those first initial days were. Edit: there's a difference in normal heels and stripper heels, or stilettos. Although they are very tall and look much scarier to walk in, they are actually so much easier because the front of them have a bigger, square platform, so it makes it easier to balance when walking, dancing. It makes a huge difference. I can't even walk in normal heels if that tells you anything. Terrifying. My rent was due soon and I felt there was no other option, so I went straight to Craigslist offering sex. I was well aware of the possibility that I could be putting myself in serious danger, but, at the time, getting my rent in on time was my only worry. I was advertising in a murder capital city. I hated it. I hated every man I encountered in sex work afterward, and I try not to think about that time in my life. I assumed that because I was already very promiscuous and used to having sex with strangers that it wouldn't be so bad, but it's so much worse when you can't be picky. There's a reason those kind of men pay for sex. They tend to be creepy and unattractive to the point that buying sex is the only way they can get a woman to look at them. I'm sure I'll get downvoted. Reddit hates when I talk crap about prostitution because everyone has this wonderful, idealized picture of it in their heads, while I spent years drinking heavily just to get the images out of my own head. I ended up going to trade school and I now have a well-paying, exciting career in factory labor, but I wouldn't trade it for any kind of sex work. I actually enjoy my job. And I get to gladly tell any man that tries hitting on me there to go duck yourself with an airline. Edit: also, I understand the flack I'm getting for calling these men unattractive. I have had wonderful, consensual, satisfying sex with many traditionally unattractive men. However, I have no love for my former clients, who I found ugly inside and out.
Like and subscribe for more funny, interesting, and scary r/ask Reddit videos.